philosophy of pregnancy. What would that be? Everyone who's ever lived is a result of pregnancy, if you will, but there's remarkably little written about it. We know a lot about the stages of fetal development, or what the mother might be expected to feel or experience at certain points. But what does it all mean? What wisdom is there waiting to be expressed? That's what I'm trying to find out in this series. And helping me is Karin Eglinton, coach and mentor at Intergifted. My name is Miriam van der Valk. For this first part, our focus is pregnancy as holding space.
I was particularly thinking about our first part and sort of bouncing from thought to thought in what it means to hold space in the body. Like somehow my mind is instantly drawn to the ideas. As a little sort of parenthesis, I'm quite a bit of a human biology nerd. And that has to do partially with the fact that I have a chronic illness. And so I read about how the body works incessantly.
Good.
Yeah.
Perfect partner for this conversation.
Yeah. I know. So part of that, my interest is in the, sort of like the poetic resonances between biology and philosophy or psychology or, the mind or the soul.
Wonderful.
Yeah. So I will start just sort of throwing ideas at you, okay?
Yeah.
Is that right?
Yes.
Okay, so holding space. So one of the things that came to my mind is, and I will look for references if you need them later, because I was just sort of like brainstorming. And one of the things I'm fascinated about is the fact that in pregnancy, and in breastfeeding particularly, the fat that a woman accumulates on her hips since her puberty is the fat that will be, like the body sort of religiously preserves that fat for breast milk.
Really?
Yes. So actually the quality of nutrients that you received in your first years of puberty is what you're going to be passing on in your breast milk to your child.
Oh no, I was
I know, I thought the same. I was
yeah.
like, oh no. What? Like if I ever have a baby, she's screwed, like there goes all the junk food and all the fries, So ideally, like a young teenage girl would be eating, like healthy omega-3 fats and all these things, right?
Yeah.
For the baby's development. And it's interesting considering how, our society views fat, right, as this evil thing, and how there's this stubborn fat, quote unquote, that many women are trying to get rid of. And it's actually their bodies preserving that fat for the eventuality of a baby.
Yeah, exactly. It's not even for you.
No, it's not like this is not for you to touch or decide upon.
Yeah. Yeah, it's very funny how fat became the villain. That's a different story. I was also thinking about these the brown fat. Have you heard of that? The white and brown. So the babies have the baby has a lot of brown fat, like all of. Well, I've seen these images where, because it's a very tiny little being with almost no muscles, or very small muscles. And it's all packed with this brown wonderful fat. So I'm thinking the fat that the mother has accumulated since the teenage years, it's still sort of the normal white fat, right?
Correct. Yes.
Yeah. What else do I know about the brown fat? Oh, you can make brown fat in yourself by, for instance, being out when it's very cold.
Yeah. It's very energy active. I've been trying to get some of that. I've been like trying to convince my body to make some of that.
I saw this program where they had a lot of, from a Swedish university somewhere, where they had these poor guys who were sitting with the windows open in t-shirts being really, really cold for like 3 months, and biking to university in shorts and t-shirt in the middle of winter. But it was really good for them, and and I suppose it stops being extremely painful after a while.
In my own humble experiments, I could tell you, yeah, that is true.
Mm.
I mean, I have not gone that far, but this is also a different story. But because of my chronic conditions, I had like a huge temperature dysregulation, so I thought a little bit of brown fat might help.
Oh,
And
cool.
so I practiced this like being cold outdoors and taking cold showers and so on, and it does get better over time.
Mm.
And it is actually like an adaptation. And what I know is that it takes about 2 weeks to for your body to start adapting. But then yeah, and then to when it gets warm again, it loses some of that adaptation.
2 weeks only. 2 weeks. It's always 2 weeks, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's so fast in a way.
Yeah. Yeah. It certainly is.
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks. Okay, so that's the fat bit. Yes. What
Mm-hmm.
else to say about this? So the baby gets the fat. Yeah, because that's what a lot of when I started, because I have a daughter who'll be 10 this year,
Mm-hmm.
and about when she was about 4, I went to the gym for the very first time in my life, and
Okay.
the woman who helped me out there uh, said that what I should work on mostly is the hip and bottom muscles, because these are the largest muscles in the body, but
Mm-hmm.
they're also the ones that tend to um, you can see very quickly if someone's had a lot of babies, because your bottom shrinks. Yeah.
Interesting. Yeah,
So
because of
yeah,
that.
exactly. It all goes together. Makes sense.
Yeah, it all goes together. That's very interesting.
Yeah.
And I guess what the larger thought that I was having is how there's this process that's completely outside of our control where um, this female body has a plan
Mm.
for reproduction that has completely nothing to do with our conscious awareness and attention, and we can either align with it or be screwed,
Yeah.
or
And
suffer for it because its programming is so much stronger than willpower or beauty images or all those things.
yeah, and that it's so much earlier than, because in the olden days, say not even that long ago, I think maybe 100, maybe 200 years ago,
Mm-hmm.
women used to get their first period when they were 17, 18.
Yes.
Yeah. And
Yeah,
this
you're
is,
right.
yeah, it also sort of, oh, maybe so that would be just, but it's not, it's still, that was still pretty young to have your first child. A lot of people didn't have their children. It's this myth we have that people had children when they were 20, but
Right.
yeah, they didn't really, not 100 or 150 years ago.
Yeah, and that's I don't know what has changed essentially in fertility. Like I'm not well versed in that, what it used to be like versus what it's like now.
Mm.
But one other thing that I do know is when a woman first gets her first period, there's they're not necessarily fertile yet.
Yeah,
It
yeah.
might take a couple of years before they're actually able to carry a child to term.
Mm. Yeah, definitely to term, because your tube
Yeah,
gets small.
yeah, exactly. And
Yeah,
then there's this thing about the eggs, right? The eggs have been there all along.
yeah, yes.
And so, when my mom was pregnant with me, my ovaries were already full of eggs, and I was already inside her, where her eggs had been inside my grandmother
Yeah,
while she was pregnant with her. And so this is like inception thing happening.
yeah. and
Mm.
and that is the reason why if you're pregnant with a girl, you might feel sick more than with a boy.
Oh, really? I had no idea.
Yeah, because you have the double female hormones going on.
Ah,
Yeah,
interesting,
I
interesting.
know, I know. God,
You experienced that yourself?
yeah. Well, I'm not really sure if this is a girl, but I think it might be. It sort of feels the same as last time. Although I
Mm,
generally feel better, but I'm in better shape now
mm-hmm,
than I was 10 years ago.
mm,
Yeah, but it's I definitely heard that with, but I also have friends who've had boys and who were throwing up the entire 9 months. So it's lots of parameters.
There might be other factors as well.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So therefore, holding space is like, something. It's like I also think about it. It's like it's going back in time and forward in time.
It's going back in time and forward in time, and it was set in motion
Hmm.
with sort of the first people.
Yeah.
It's a necessity, this holding space thing. I'm thinking about the one of the sentences that sort of triggered the whole idea of wanting to have a conversation about pregnancy is when I read that sentence that schizoid characters,
Character style. Yeah.
yeah, exactly, the quote was, it can assimilate but not accommodate.
Yeah.
And I thought
Yeah.
so much about that, how you term the image of someone who completely takes in this other person and sort of is everything is warped,
Mm.
and then
Yeah.
how it feels now, because I thought about it, or like I always do, when I have to try these thoughts, am I like that? And I really have to go into it um, and and then I luckily came to the conclusion, no, I am accommodating this. That's what I'm doing.
Hmm.
So that's good to know. But right now it's sort of I'm accommodating very much because I'm only a couple of weeks away now from the due date,
Yeah.
and it's really it's getting hard to sleep. I have to like sit sleep because I can't really like the baby is in the way if I try to lie in a certain position, or if I move too quickly. Also, I can't really use my belly muscles, so I have to
Hmm.
like sort of pull myself from from one.
Oh.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. I can imagine. I can picture that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So
Yeah. Talk about accommodating.
talk about accommodating, exactly, and how. Yeah. I also saw these. There was this elderly woman on TV who said something about it's not nice to get older. It's not nice. You can't do things as fast as you could. And then the program was about sort of resolving that issue. But it's the same with being very pregnant, because now I'm just sort of I was thinking that before this conversation I would have a shower and put some makeup on just for the feel of it. But what happened? Well, I fell asleep, and then then I got up just before. So and I'm thinking, maybe I should go and get some avocados, and and then I just sort of cross things off my to-do list more and more. And I'm usually quite an energetic person who likes to get things done and to do a lot of things, and to be efficient. And I like to write these have done lists instead of
Yes.
to do
Yes.
lists. I think it's a good way of getting even more more things done, and you can write very detailed lists. So not just like write an essay, but you can say get out paper, or underline things in 2 books, and then you. But now I find myself cocooning. I'm like, I
Mm.
am cocooning this butterfly thing, and
Yeah.
yeah, and uh, that is holding space precisely. That
Right.
is precisely what that is, holding space.
Yeah, exactly. There,
Yeah.
the space itself has priorities that might not be your consciousness's priorities.
Yeah. Exactly. Exactly. And what do I do? I mean, I have to. I adapt, and I say this is my role right now.
Mm.
And then there are other people who I have one colleague who told me, well, people are running. Some pregnant people run marathons. I'm like,
Nice for them.
okay, not me. I am not one of them.
Yeah, which is a very interesting sort of creative tension, isn't it? The action of surrendering
Mm.
to those priorities while still, remaining sort of like in structural integrity so that you can hold that space, like remaining strong,
Yes,
but surrendering at the same time to the imperative of that role.
I love these words. Surrendering, but
Mm.
remaining structural integrity.
Yeah.
Oh, yes, I just have to repeat it. It's beautiful. Lovely words. Oh, cannibalism. Pregnancy as incorporation. That is also precisely what it is.
Yeah.
Incorporating. And how incorporation in the magical, symbolic sense
Right,
was.
not in the creepy sense, hopefully. I guess it could happen though that a mother who was not maybe necessarily in her power, let's say, or self-aware, or a full psychological adult, as Jan Salen likes to say, might actually sort of devour the child's essence in a sense.
Yes.
I think that sounds pretty terrible, but
Yeah.
it does happen.
Yes, exactly. And that person, it's unhealthy. It's an unhealthy state. But I was thinking about devouring the essence of someone else as um, a very practical and literal way of wanting of for cultures who practice cannibalism or who used to do that. You know, you take the
Yes.
power of the other person by eating them,
Yeah.
and it's how could you ever have that idea? I mean, it must come from this. I want to sort of credit the mothers of history for
Yeah.
bringing these ideas to the collective unconscious. You know, that you are actually bringing forth this someone who you don't know, who nobody knows, but it's a real person, and it might be the tribe's leader, you know,
Yeah.
or something. So it's sort of what happens when you have something in your belly, like this. That must be where the eating bit comes from, because if you wanted to just acquire someone else's powers, I'm sure you could put your hands on their head, or you could smell them, or like the spirit, you take in the spirit or something. But in cannibalism, it's the eating, it's the putting it in your belly.
Yeah, and isn't that also like, I mean, I know that there are certain people, it's like, just since we're going into like, bizarre subjects, there are people who have these sexual fantasies of being eaten.
Really?
Yeah, the desire that they're trying to fulfill is that feeling of envelopment, that being held space for, basically.
Yes, of
That
course.
being completely cocooned, like what you're saying, being completely enveloped and merged with that object or the being who is going to eat them. So that's one of the aspects of that desire.
Yeah, it is. When my big daughter was a baby, if she was lying in her pram and she couldn't quite sleep, I figured quite sort of instinctively that it worked really well if I put my hand on her chest and sort of pushed down a little bit, or just let the weight of my arm be over her. And that's the same idea as what's her name again? There's a woman who developed an autistic woman who developed a machine for
Temple Grandin.
Yes, Temple.
Yeah.
For a hugging machine for distressed cows. Yeah. So this is the same again. You want to know your limit or your boundaries, like where I end.
Yes.
It begins already. I can feel it when the baby is sort of is trying to stretch out, which it does a lot, and I push a little bit gently, or I sort of tap a little bit, or and it stops, and and it goes to another side, and I sort of try to, like, I'm carrying it, because well, I am. And
yeah.
Yeah, it's so crazy that you're carrying someone inside.
It is. Which makes me also think about this other aspect that we mentioned before, the intersubjectivity aspect, right? Yeah. Which has everything to do with where do I end, where do you begin, and what is this shared space between us?
Yes, exactly. Yes. And the immanence, transcendence, sort of where do that also goes with it. Like what is inside me, and what part, right now I have another mind. We
Yeah.
have two minds in the same body. How crazy is that?
Yes. Right. Dreaming together. Like, do your dreams bleed into each other's?
Oh, God, what if they do? I have the craziest dreams every night. If I wake up on average 2 or 3 times, it happens when you're pregnant, then I have a new dream between every break, and it's
Yes.
so vivid. It's not scary. It's not um, out there or extremely symbolic, but it's such a dream state.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Like you're living in it.
I'm totally living in it. Oh, I have a
Yeah.
colleague who says she hasn't had a dream in 20 years.
What?
Can
I
you
can't
imagine?
imagine. No.
And what a life! How? Oh, I don't want to say I pity anyone because that's not. It's a little bit
No, sure.
arrogant, but still, I don't know how I would survive. It would be like,
Yeah.
uh,
Yeah, being a big dreamer myself, I actually sort of need those dreams to keep me going. So,
yeah, exactly. Yeah.
yeah. And and yeah, I wonder, if that in any way there's like those minds get to bleed in the places where the boundaries are thin,
Yeah. Where would that be?
They
What do
I
you
don't know,
think?
like that's why I brought up the dreaming. I thought uh uh I just to share something a little intimate,
Hmm?
but with every partner I've ever had, I have shared dreams. Like, we wake up and we're like dreaming the same thing.
Cool.
And apparently this might be related to me because, even if I just share a bed with a friend while we're sleeping over somewhere, they share dreams with me. So
Yeah.
it's like I have a pretty powerful antenna or something. I don't know if this is true or not. I'm not making any assertions of any kind, but I think about it.
Yeah. And it sounds like
Um,
it.
so then there's this, mysterious thing that happens.
Mm.
And so I wonder if there's something like that where, when we're awake, our ego boundaries tend to be stronger, but when we're sleeping or in the place between sleep and waking, the boundaries of the ego are a little thinner
Yes.
and things start bleeding out. And so I wonder if your baby, when she dreams and you dream, there's some crossover that's to happen where your dreams shape her mind and vice versa.
But what does she dream? What do you dream when you have not
No
when you have
experiences
not
yet. Yeah.
Yeah, well, but she has experiences, I suppose,
Yeah.
because it's different when I sort of sit down and stand up, and I mean, and also I was thinking, um, I've been thinking for several months now that if it's any sound that will not frighten her or him, I think her, is the sound of my sewing machine, because if anything, she's really heard that a lot, and
Yeah.
yeah. So this is an experience, This is a hearing experience, and apparently they can also tell somehow through the skin whether it's night or
Eh,
day.
exactly.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. And then the baby's experiencing, your emotions, like your excitement or your tiredness, or all those things are like sort of hormonally present
Mm.
in the matrix that they're in, right? So that
Yes.
also is impactful to them.
Mm.
Um, which actually brings me to this other thought that I had, which is, you're not a tabula rasa. You're like your imprint. You're casting an imprint.
Yeah.
Even as you're holding space, you're casting an imprint on the child,
Mm.
and it's not, good or bad, but it is, it's going to carry your stamp in more ways than one.
Yes. Exactly. Just like the chimera links here
Yeah.
that I've just looked at. Oh man, it's yeah, it's sort of it puts there's so much important in the philosophy of pregnancy. It's unbelievable that it hasn't been explored more because it's
Seriously.
yes,
Yeah.
there's so much that has so much to do with being a person, and so many historical facts of how things work, like that, how long it was. Everybody behaved as though you were born with this as a sinner, and you need to beat it out of your system. you know, and during the school years, or the tabula rasa idea.
Yeah.
You know, it's if we need to think a bit more about this. So happy we're doing this, taking this first.
We need to introduce it to the collective world.
Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. What do you imagine would change if people were more aware of the philosophy of pregnancy?
I think the tip of my tongue, I want to say they would take it more seriously. Because we're not just dealing with, and it's not just a little thing. It's a person.
Yeah.
It's an entire universe. Like Khalil Gibran says, it's life's longing for itself.
I love that line. Yeah. And I wonder if, I think that's already happening a little bit in people who are more interested in alternative medicine or things like that. I don't know. This is just my perception. But perhaps it would be more of an active negotiation, active conversation with the person inside you.
Yeah, exactly. And you can see that's a thing that I learned quite shockingly when my daughter was young, that you don't actually, you think that a thing like respect is very easy. At least I had this idea, and it's sort of, it comes naturally or something. But how do you, to respect someone who is so small and so, I'll just give you an example. We went to, when she was about 1, we went to visit this preschool, just because you can. And as we got there, it was quite cold, and she had her mittens on, and I just sort of, I had her in my lap, and I just pulled out her mittens, and the preschool teacher, without like saying anything, and the preschool teacher looked at my daughter and said, "Oh, your mum just took your mittens. Oh, she just took them off like that." And it was just this very in-your-face revelation that I am just dealing with this person without sort of checking with her or telling her. I don't do that. I don't do anything like that anymore. Even like my friends' babies who are very, very small, I sort of look in the face and talk to, and they look very surprised because they're not used to adults sort of addressing them as people. But this is, but it feels like one of those extremely important things, and you see it quite a lot.
Yes.
Like in restaurants or cafes.
It's normal.
Yeah, it's very normal. And you see these adults who sort of they cut up their children's food and sort of feed them. Even when they can, and they show with all of their being that they want to do it themselves. Or that they're not these. How do you? It's very, very important, and this is respect for another living human being. That's exactly what it is, and it's something that you need to be aware of and to learn and to check in with properly.
Well, absolutely, and it's become, I don't know, more publicized a little bit, I guess. The certain parents, for example, who have made it, I don't know, it was all over Facebook for a while because of all the conversations that we're having about sexual consent. That teaching children from the beginning that nobody can touch their bodies unless they say so.
Yeah.
And to teach them that, then the parents would always ask first, can I pick you up? Can I take your clothes off? Can I give you a bath? Is it okay if I touch your face? And then the message starts getting imprinted that, oh, okay, there is no such thing as touching me without asking. Yeah. But you're absolutely right. This is new. It's news to us that we need to do that.
Yeah, I do that too. I do that even with the babies who are, a couple of weeks old, who definitely don't know language and yet. Or I think, maybe I'm just being, maybe in 10 years we'll all be like, oh, of course they do. But anyway, so it's someone who looks like they don't really understand language. I just go, hello, my name is Miriam, and I'm going to pick you up now. I know your mother from what we
Right.
became friends 10 years ago. You know, it's and it feels very. I like it too. You know, it's very nice. It's not a toy. It's not a little. It's
That's
not a
right.
yeah, and it's not a pet or you know, it's it's a person. Yeah.
It's right. It's not an object. It
Mm.
requires this intersubjective awareness to say, okay, here's another entity with a consciousness,
Yeah.
and I will approach it as such.
Yes, exactly. And I will introduce myself. It's not like
Yeah,
a
like
yeah.
minimum respect.
Yeah, exactly. Minimum respect.
Mhm.
Introduce
I think
yourself.
that's wonderful. I think that's wonderful. I worked as a nanny for many years. I worked with teaching children for many years.
Mm.
And that it was the thing that killed me there in that world was the lack of respect for children and
Mm.
for looking at what they were doing and saying, oh, okay, I'm trying to understand from your perspective what's going on
Mm.
instead of trying to impose top down, the hierarchical will.
Mm.
And even in the best places, I always found that that was present.
Yeah.
And it really hurt me. Like I was like, wait, no, that's not how we talk to them.
Mm. Mm.
Yeah, one of the changes I would wish for if we had this kind of extremely exquisite awareness of a consciousness growing inside a body,
Yeah.
that then we would carry on that awareness after the child is born.
Yes. Exactly like that. And what about the dad? What do you think? The one who's partaking but is always on the outside. He's where my
Interesting.
hands are, you know? He's not
Yeah,
yeah, we can we feel it on the same way from the outside.
yeah, that's very interesting. It's an interesting question because they too are holding space,
Mm.
and in the, I guess at least from the more feminist perspective,
Mm.
hopefully they're holding space for the mother. You know,
Ah.
it's like concentric circles are happening.
Yes.
So you're holding space for the baby, but you need others to hold space for you
Yeah.
as you do this because otherwise you are going to run out of resources.
Yeah. Exactly. Yeah. He just went. He just went and bought this. I don't know what that's called even. This table thingy where you change your diapers. You know, from IKEA.
Yeah,
Yeah. And he brought it back home, and because I don't carry heavy things anymore.
right.
And he goes, "So can you put it together?" Because I and I'm like, "Of course," because I love putting together IKEA things, and I'm really good at it, and I don't get frustrated from the. So that was very
It was
good.
more like a treat for you,
Yeah,
like
exactly.
giving you something fun to do.
Yeah, that's how I took it.
Yeah, that's
Yeah.
sweet. Um, yeah, because I really don't know. I mean, I've had hypothetical conversations with my husband about this,
Mm.
and I've been pregnant once,
Mm-hmm.
um, and I know what it was like for him, like watching him. He was incredibly cautious around me,
Yes.
It
Yeah.
was like, I love you. I want to protect you. I don't know what's going
Yeah,
on.
exactly. You're not allowed to go anywhere
Yeah,
alone. Yeah.
but I actually don't know, and I would be very curious to hear, a man's perspective, an involved man's perspective. Does it feel like to witness pregnancy, to be a part of a pregnancy, to hold space for a pregnant woman, to go through all her hormonal changes, all her cravings, all her things,
Mm.
and the disruption that entails, but to do that gladly. I don't know. That's how I imagine
Yes,
it
and
ideally, you know?
and to do it respectfully, to not just
Yeah,
say you're okay, well you're pregnant, so obviously you're gonna sit here and cry, you know,
right.
but
Exactly.
to say what is it, you know, can you is there a way, can I do anything? Is there a way for you to put words to this? Yeah, and
Yeah.
yeah, which brings me to the next Eugene Gendlin. Gendlin? I don't know how to pronounce that, but Eugene anyway.
Okay.
Yes,
Yes.
the guy who wrote Focusing, how to gain access to your body's knowledge, I think is a subtitle, but I'm not really sure. I just finished it. I heard about it last summer in a philosophy conference. It was quite fantastic. The book is from 78 or something.
Okay.
But he talks, it's a sort of steps you take. First you start asking yourself, what's between me and feeling very good right now? And then you start sort of listing the things that you imagine them as as sort of in the other corner of the room you're in, and you say, oh, there's that thing about that, and the worry about that, and then the conversation I had yesterday, and then you'd sort of start by picking one of them, and then you look for the felt sense of the word.
So if you feel hungry, for example, or whatever, then you look for how that feels,
you look for sort of hunger, and then you see, but it would be slightly more complicated feelings, like
okay, anxiety.
Yes, for instance, I'm going to have a meeting tomorrow with my colleague about cover charges that we've had the last year and how to present these to the authorities, stuff like that. And I'm already thinking, God, I have no idea. I hate these things. I don't know even who to ask. And then I ask myself, what's this feeling about? It's then I can see quite quickly that it's a fear of making a mistake, or it's something about how I want to do things right. I want to do things in an easy way. I want things to flow naturally, so I'm not sort of, because I have the other tendency is to just go, oh, I'm not going to do anything at all with my private business ever because it's just too complicated I'll do everything for free, because it's too complicated to get money. I don't know what to do with the money when it comes in, but which is but so I can see what that's about, and then as it doesn't sort of take away the problem. It's not like it doesn't mean that
it doesn't change your mind.
Yeah, and I didn't sort of automatically download the Swedish taxpayer system, just by having this thought, but it certainly relieves the feeling, the tension.
By putting sort of this tender attention to it.
Yes, and finding the words for it.
And the felt sense, so it's that's like not just the word in your head, but also the somatic component of that word.
Exactly.
Is that right?
Yes, that is perfectly right, because he started the study of focusing, that's what he calls it, just focusing on the feeling, by studying thousands of tapes of therapy sessions. And he found that quite soon he was able to predict which therapy would be successful and which would not be successful, regardless of all the hard work and years together that the patient and therapist would do. And he figured that the component, the most important component of success was when the patient would be like, oh, right, and have these sort of sighing noises, or you could see the posture when the felt sense of the word sort of was
when it
felt.
hit them.
Yes, exactly. when the word had a felt sense in the body. That's exactly. So how cool! What a cool theory, eh? And and the book sort of shows you how to do this with yourself, and with the instead of getting into this mode, which I often do, and most people I know, that you just repeat the story to yourself. Well, now this happened again, and of course it's my luck that, so you can, if you have the felt sense of it. And I was thinking, or part of my personal hope for this series is to find the felt sense of pregnancy. But
I was gonna ask, so what does pregnancy feel like?
Exactly.
In that sense.
Yeah, this is gosh. I can't say now, I have to think. But
Yeah, you have to feel into it, no?
Yeah, I have to feel into it, and I have to. Yeah, exactly. Oh, yeah. But part of what it does feel like is the like accommodation and the future aspect. And I also have this. There's also the creativity spark, like the life's desire for itself, kind of thing, and the hosting aspect, that I am honored to have been given this task of taking care of this, whoever it is who decided to come now, because we did try for a year, tried to have a baby for a year.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Uh-huh.
And then it happened. So it's and I also feel that this is an important feeling to have, and I want to, and I'd like it to infect other people who are pregnant and other people who want to be pregnant or have been. This sense of honor, that you should be honored to have been given this task, by the universe or whatever, and not just be so, because it's so easy to be so annoyed with your kids, or you think that they're like, I want to have a glass of wine, and I'll have a glass of wine. I'm looking forward to my glass of wine. I have been waiting many months now. But I don't have to have it now.
So as you hold the space, you're thankful for it rather than treating it as a burden. Is that what you're saying?
Yes, but it's even more the honor, like to
the honor.
To let it sort of raise my spine a little bit.
Yeah. Okay. So it's like a pride.
Yes.
Is that? Yeah.
It's
like
pride.
you. So it's not so much the aspect. So because when you said it, what I was imagining, what I was feeling in my felt sense was like a feeling of sort of expansive gratitude. But what you're saying is more like, oh yeah, I've been given this mantle almost, and that's the honor, the pride.
Yeah, that's funny that you say that. Yeah, yeah, I'm giggling because because I was just recently thinking about. I told myself that I'm a queen. I had this conversation with myself. I'm a queen, and I was looking at my daughter and like, she's also a queen. She's a queen. I can see that she's a,
I love that.
Yeah. Yeah. So we'll see what.
But doesn't this connect perfectly? At least it does to my mind with what we were saying before about the eggs being inside the eggs,
Ooh, yes,
and that there's like an aspect of lineage. You come from like royal lineage of women whose eggs were inside the other's eggs and so on.
Yeah, you're right. It's the blue blood lineage.
Yeah.
Or maybe and if so, how much of it can you choose? Like what part of of the royalness is there because I have seen it. You see what I'm saying?
Like a chosen royalty and a chosen majesty in a way.
Yeah.
Because you're choosing to acknowledge the honor.
Exactly, and if we're and I suppose everyone could do that. Everyone who is pregnant could see this too. You see?
Yeah.
We all have it. What did you say before? You said you said gratitude. That this that's definitely part of it too. This is a very complicated feeling.
It's a complex feeling for sure. Yeah, I didn't think it was just like a one color thing, but
no, I know.
But I was curious to understand the particular hue that you were experiencing.
But you're right about the lineage thing. It's funny too. God, it's a little bit pompous and preposterous, but it does kind of. There's also the sense that when you have a child, you are next in line for death.
Yes.
It's just inevitable, and the people around you change their names. So when you become mummy, your own mum becomes the grandmother.
Yeah.
So you start to change. People change names. And when I talk about, and now I don't with my daughter now because she's 10, so I just said, oh yeah, well, let's go to mama, and because, and I mean my own mama. I'm not like
Yeah.
quoting myself, but when, but, but I did when she was very young, mommy will get it. So, yeah.
Yeah, that is very interesting. So it's like it also has an aspect of a rite of passage
Yes, right,
where you're,
exactly. And
yeah,
position, sort of
yeah,
roles and positions, and it's so much to this say, so much.
yeah.
Yeah.
Can I tell you something that popped into my head just now?
Yes.
So actually, I was reminded that in the tarot cards, the third major arcana is the Empress,
Oh,
and the Empress is pregnant.
oh, of course.
Yeah,
Oh, wonderful.
I just like when you said this, I'm a queen. I was like that picture was in my head, and I used to have this beautiful tarot set in which the Empress was actually always like she was lying on the ground on the like in a meadow of flowers.
Mm.
So I was like this pregnant woman with her like royal regalia and lying on the ground. So because that card has aspects of this fertility.
Yes, absolutely. And also the like lying on the ground in nature.
Mm-hmm.
This is very vulnerable, yet she's
Pre-
empress and will not be hurt, you know?
Precisely,
Mm.
exactly.
And I also find that now that I mean, it's been very visible for several months now because I'm quite round. Um,
Yeah,
uh,
I saw your picture.
yeah.
It was beautiful.
Yeah, that'll probably be the image that goes with this when I post this online.
Yeah.
But people are very very nice, and people in the beginning when it didn't really show that much. I I hated being on the tram. I didn't want people to sort of accidentally slam their bags into me, and I had this
Yes.
my arm out protectively all the time. But now it's absolutely obvious, and I walk very slowly, and it sometimes strikes me what a perfect robbery victim I would be now. There's no way I could fight back or run,
Aha,
you
yeah.
know.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, how interesting. Yeah,
Yes,
so there's that huge aspect of vulnerability
it's huge.
while holding space for this other being.
Yeah,
Hmm.
very much
And
so.
I mean, like in my head, cognitively, I have I know a pregnant woman needs to, constantly, rest and sit down and can't lift heavy things. So it's like in my head, this is imprinted. But while you're saying it now and describing it in this way and associating it with this Empress card,
Mm,
there's the internal sense of vulnerability. You've given all your resources to
mm.
another being, therefore you have very little left to protect yourself in the way that you could otherwise.
Yes, I can't do
Mm.
anything, and I also can't protect my bigger daughter. Like the other day, she called me as she was on the tram on her own. It was very late, and I just it became a little bit of a personal drama for me. But everything was fine and okay, and she was safe and stuff. But I had this intense fear that I couldn't do anything. If I wasn't pregnant, I would have just jumped on my bike and gone to the tram station where she was and sort of jumped on
Right.
it there and taken her, not, so that she wouldn't be alone. But suddenly I couldn't do anything. I was
Mm.
just here with my phone calling her dad, saying like,
Right.
It's very frightening, this vulnerability. It's not used. I'm not used to feel so unable to fend for myself, or you know. But on the other hand, the other part is the like also with the Empress card. There aren't any tigers in the background. There,
Yeah.
they're not
Yeah.
there,
Yeah.
and even the people in the supermarket are also very nice. Only the proper assholes don't notice, you know. But
Yeah.
everyone else is very very nice and said, "Oh, be careful! Look behind you!" And like the guy who
Yeah.
was fixing the vegetables, and it's a very universal sense of
Being
com-
respected, being watched out for.
and being part of the sort of the human race, more than
Yeah.
it's wonderful.
Even more than you were when you were just yourself in a
Yeah,
way.
absolutely. Then when I was just myself, I was just the way I dressed, or the way I wore my hair, or whatever, this color of my skin, all of
Mm-hmm.
these things. And now I'm a pregnant woman.
Yeah. How interesting that.
Mm.
Yeah. Um, I'm making a link to the thing we said before about being willing to have respect for another being, even if they cannot express themselves. In this case, like you're saying, you can't fend for yourself, yet you're receiving this respect
Mm.
that has been sort of latent all along, and now that you're pregnant, it is activated to protect you.
Yes. Yeah, it's activated to protect me. Yeah. Oh man, there's so much in the I want to get more into the collective unconscious, collective unconscious ideas about what these things are, the incorporation and the wonderful. Yeah.
Yeah, super exciting. Yeah, we'll definitely explore that. Yeah, that's interesting. That's actually something that I hadn't thought about. I'm like, I guess not surprised, but intrigued by that idea of having to let go of your defenses and allow your environment to protect you.
Mm. So there's so much trust, you have no idea, and trust is
Mm-hmm.
difficult. It's for
Yes.
me, yeah. I have suddenly I have lots and lots of it, and suddenly I have it just all goes away, and um, yeah, and I get really frightened that something's wrong with the baby, or it's gonna die. Like if I don't feel its movements for you know 4 minutes,
Mm,
it's because I feel it
uh-huh.
all the time. I felt it all the time since maybe week number 17. Pregnancy is usually 40 weeks, and now it's week 37. So I've
Yes.
felt it like almost all the time for 20 weeks. And then yesterday it sort of stopped a little bit and was going all soft, and now my belly just pushes right out and it's stone hard because the baby is doing something. So I'm like, yeah.
Yeah.
As we talk, I'm sort of massaging my belly a little bit.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's the externalized trust. You have to trust in the people around you.
Yeah.
And there's that internal trust that the baby's okay and that it's going to make it, and that that the process will do what it does.
And the trust in the future that
Yeah.
I will be able to carry out this task, because
Mhm.
there will be a task to carry out, and that this is part of my journey to be the mother of this person,
Aha.
because I want that now. So if the baby dies, it would be I don't want to. It's so terrible to even say these words. I'm like tearing up a little bit
Yes.
as we speak, but
Yes.
no, but you know you you never know. You never know any of these things, and it's
Right, right. You're like in that edge, then that's why it's trust, because if it was assured, then you wouldn't have to trust.
yeah, exactly, yeah, exactly.
Hmm.
That's exactly what it is. I have to trust. I have to trust that everything will be okay, and then everything. What's that saying? Everything is okay. Everything will be okay. Everything will be okay. Everything
Yes.
will be okay.
Yes. Oh, wow. Yeah, because then also, if you were stressed and fearful and worried, then you would also be creating the inhospitable environment inside you.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
I have an obligation to trust.
Yeah, so you actually have an obligation to trust,
Yeah.
because if you were fearful or stressed
Yeah.
or somehow under distress, then you would actually be generating a hostile environment for the child and therefore creating like self-fulfilling prophecy there.
Yes. Exactly. And a schizoid
Mhm.
character, because it's impossible to hold that much worry without going like, oh, I wouldn't be worried if it wasn't for you, you know. So
Yeah, yeah,
yeah.
exactly. Yeah, it's like this wouldn't have happened if the child would internalize that worry as
Yeah.
being their fault.
Yeah. Exactly.
Mm.
So it's
Yeah.
it's very difficult and very complicated, all of this, and the responsibility is overwhelming. But
Mm.
so yeah, and you have to deal with it with sort of graceful urgency, you know,
Yes.
to take it so completely seriously now, not delay anything, you know,
Yeah.
and yet with grace and with like the guardian angels of heaven, fulfill your
Mm.
duties, you know, without so, here we go again with the surrendering and maintaining structural integrity. So
Yes.
mm,
So it's like you're like a hawk in one sense, but on
mm,
the other hand, you're also at ease and in flow.
mm. And a vessel, you know, like I have to
Yeah.
be a functioning vessel.
Yeah, which is the surrendering, which is the I like the sense I have is like I must not obstruct the process.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah. It was I must not obstruct the process because it was set in motion so long ago. It's the sort of past future thing and how time suddenly you don't know which is which anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh yeah. Have you watched the movie Arrival?
No. I'm
Oh,
taking
okay.
a note
Well,
now.
yes. It has a beautiful underlying component about, circularity of circular time.
Mm. Yeah. And that's another thing about when your child is born because and you
Mhm.
suddenly realize I remember looking at my husband at the time and saying this is how our parents felt when we were born, and you just
Mm.
have this overwhelming crazy love, and
Mm.
the other side of it is fear,
Yeah.
which is as big because you don't want anything to ever happen that's bad,
Yeah.
you know. And that's how our parents felt when we were born. Can you imagine?
Yeah.
It's crazy, crazy, crazy to what it does to your sense of like self-worth. Even if I mean, they felt it for a short while, I'm sure. Most,
Yeah. Yeah.
yeah,
Even if things went wrong,
yeah,
somewhere there was that feeling present. I'm thinking about that right now. I'm like, it's like it's a different twist, probably a more holistic one, maybe, of the typical thing of like parents telling their children, "Well, you understand why this is so hard when you're a parent,
yeah, yes, yeah,
or you'll do the same thing, or you'll you'll get it when you're older, but not when you're older, but when you're a parent yourself, you'll get why I'm
mm,
doing this."
mm,
So I heard that from my mom. And I think there's probably truth to that.
yeah. It's very touching in the in the sort of like an earthquake. You know, your inner is touched, so it rumbles a little bit, and then that's that's how it feels. You're just like, oh, and then the lava tears come out of
Yeah.
the cracks.
Yeah. Yeah. Um, yeah, I'm also feeling into that and also wondering how much of that, I guess, depending on the person, of course, but for you, maybe, do you find that that initiated some process of forgiveness of whatever mistakes your parents must have made or
Yeah,
something like
absolutely.
that?
Yeah,
Yeah.
totally. Yeah, I'm usually quite tough on myself. Like I don't hide my mistakes in any way.
Yeah.
It's not like I'm beating myself up anymore now that I'm older and wiser, but
Hmm.
yeah, I try to learn from everything, and it's easy to see that they did everything they could, everything they thought was right, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, they really, really did. I think it's yeah, I don't see any malice in my parents, you know.
Hmm.
Some,
Yeah, that's pretty transcendent.
yes, it
It's like,
is. Yeah. Yeah.
mm,
Oh, I have one quote from Nachmanides, the Jewish mystic. The stranger's
yes.
eyes are directed to God. God has mercy on account of their bondage, not their merit. Stranger in my belly. her eyes are directed to God because they are connected. They are connected.
Yeah.
She hasn't done anything. She hasn't done, but she has done stuff, right? When does it start being a baby, a person?
That's a very good question. I don't know I don't know when that happens actually. I've heard somewhere around 4 months.
I suppose different governments have different rules.
Yes,
Depending, so they can decide when you're allowed to do an abortion or not.
that's right.
This is certainly its own person.
Right.
And
right. It's like what I was, when you say that, I'm brought back to the thing about dreams. So if her eyes are directed to God, does that put you closer to God in that sense?
Yes.
Whether in a literal or metaphorical sense, is there something that you are also receiving through an invisible umbilical cord that she is connected to?
Yes. Oh, I'm happy this came up because now we're in the chimera thing again with the with the cells that started to divide. They created the placenta, so they have created this center of connection between me and it.
Yes.
She did that. The baby did that.
Yeah.
And she's also sending her brand new stem cells to me to protect me.
Yeah.
Yeah. So the baby is protecting me. Oh, yeah. Just like I'm protecting it.
Yeah. There's also this there's this saying where I come from that says every baby is born with a loaf of bread under its arm.
Okay. Right.
It's a really bizarre saying in a way. It's like an encouragement for new parents, saying basically the baby will, sap your resources, but it brings its own resources with it. And it's something that we say all the time. And it's sort of like an encouragement for people when they're a new family to trust, like what we're saying, to trust that they're provided for, that there's something that the baby brings with it that is greater than what they can imagine. So therefore the baby's not like a drain on the resources of the family, not to think of a child that way.
Exactly. That's very good. It's very good.
Yeah.
I'm very excited to see with this, and sort of I want to say it's a gift that keeps giving, but it's kind of now that my big one is 10. I'm so glad I've got a 10-year-old. I mean, she's so cool. She made it. I look at her and I see that she's fine. She's going to be fine.
Yeah.
It's wonderful. It worked, even though I made those mistakes, and I was not as wise as I am now. But I'm so happy
it's like
that
she brought something, the universe brought something, life brought something, and the process that was put in motion since before you were born did something.
Yeah, I tell her quite often that I'm so happy that she turned out to be she and not someone else. And then we giggle a little bit about it. And then she always says, but it's because of you, because you raised me. And then I usually say, but no, I don't think I did. I think it's you. I think you raised you. I was just standing next to you.
Which is also another form of holding space. It's like the next level of holding space that you will do after the birth.
The witnessing. To be a witness to your child's life. To see, I see I see what you're going through. I see the people who are in your life, That changes immediately when they start preschool or school, because you don't see them all the time anymore.
Right, they have their own lives all of a sudden.
Yeah, and you have to rely on things like language to share what's happened, and then you have to and then you have to make them talk. I have a book called How to Talk So Kids Will Listen and Listen So Kids Will Talk.
I know this book. Yeah.
It's great. Everybody should read it. You just wait, and then she starts to talk.
That's very interesting because then right now you're communicating with your baby via chemicals and nutrients and feelings,
Yeah, pushes.
and of course words too, but not through language per se.
Mm, mm.
And
Sounds.
then, right, it's through a more primal uh, channel, let's say.
Yeah,
And then, like you say, there's a point where then you have to rely on language, like their boundaries. So you have to bridge through this like thin bridge that is language.
yeah, and then we have lost something, we have gained something. What we've gained is we are now part of society. We are
Yeah.
socialized, civilized beings who connect through language. Right now, we are connecting in a different way. Me and the baby, I mean.
I mean, I also think about this in the sense of in the sense of trauma healing. Like,
Mm,
we're both working with people who have experienced a lot of pain in their lives,
mm,
and there's so often the theme that comes up is the desire to merge back into the womb
yeah,
and being looking for that everywhere because they didn't have a good experience with their parents or didn't have the space held to be themselves and be loved as they were.
mm,
And so the many faces that trauma can take in the end have to do with this holding space.
yes,
And so there was a place and a time for that to happen, and then it can't happen anymore.
yeah. I'm glad we're doing
And
this.
so it's so cool, right?
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah, and so it's like right now with you and every woman who's consciously caring for her child, they are doing that process so that in the future the child will arrive at that passage where your daughter is, where they're part of society, they have done it, they have gone through the merged part and come out the other side as an
mm,
individual,
mm.
and so they can continue their process onward. But so many of us have such a hard time moving on because we didn't have that.
And because suddenly there is an ability to connect, but it's wounded and sore, but
Yeah,
this is the first connection to make sure that it functions.
we will trust.
Yes, we will trust. Yeah, it's getting easier.
Well, I think we could probably keep talking all day.
Yes, I think so too.
We probably could. But instead, we'll proceed in an orderly fashion and end this here and continue with pregnancy as faith in part 2. It takes faith to go to sleep at night, that kind of faith. Meanwhile, you'll find all podcasts, articles, and philosophical practice events on philoprax.com, that's filoprax.com, and on Facebook/philoprax. See you there.